Episode 5 of Pluribus is arriving next week, and after the first 4 episodes, there are many questions surrounding what will happen next in Gilligan's new show. In particular, episode 4 deepened the stakes for Carol as she learned that the hive mind truly cannot lie and found out that there may be a way to reverse the joining. She had been doubting everything they said, but what happened at the end opened up a lot of possibilities and dangers. If they can't lie, then what they say is binding, and Carol may be forced to accept more truths she doesn't like. We also got an introduction to the character of Manousos and saw his perspective on the call with Carol back in episode 3. As he's someone who is particularly good with radio signals, I have a theory on what we might see next from him. So in this video, I'm going to be discussing my predictions and theories for Pluribus episode 5. Before I get into it though, if you want to see much more content on Vince Gilligan's Pluribus, then don't forget to support this upload by giving it a like rating and subscribing to the channel. But without further ado, let's dive into my latest predictions and theories for Vince Gilligan's Pluribus. So after the end of Pluribus episode 4, many of us were left with some big questions going into next week's episode. After episode 3 questioned the idea of individualism versus the collective identity, this one had Carol push to find some answers. She questions Zosha and the Joined, and then makes some risky moves to do something about it. Episode 4 also introduced Manousos, the enigmatic other who, like Carol, remains untouched by the sweeping infectious joy that transforms the rest of the world. He's clearly onto something with his radio signals, and a connection with Carol on the phone gives him some added hope that there is a way to uncover more answers. But moving on to episode 5, the title for the episode is Got Milk and is being directed by episode 3's Gordon Smith. It's an unpopular opinion, but I honestly thought that episode 3 by Smith was one of the best so far, as it really began to get us into the head of Carol and used her past experiences to formulate her character a bit more. It also stressed the thematic focus on individuality versus the collective, giving us some big early clues on where we may be headed. So I'm really looking forward to this next one by him, as he has written and directed some absolute bangers in the past. The description of the new episode on Apple TV reads, "Carol doubles down on her investigation, loneliness be damned. Meanwhile, howls in the night reveal a new source of danger." So with that in mind, what could we expect from Carol and Manousos in episode 5? Well, starting with Manousos, as he was the character to open episode 4, I think I have an idea on what we might see next from him. Episode 4's Manousos opening showed the phone call with Carol from his perspective, and it offered a brief initial window into his life. It showed that he's not just more withdrawn than Carol, but also significantly more wary of the others. He's so distrustful of them that he's even boarded up his office windows and deliberately destroys the food that they tried to give him. He chose to survive on dog food and packets of sugar he'd taken from his customers' storage units, preferring that over any interaction or offerings from the others. Probably the most interesting part of our time with him though is seeing him tuning a radio and setting a timer as he waits for any hint of human activity. He carefully logs every detail in a notebook. His exhausted posture and deliberate stretch in this scene suggest he's been at this routine for quite a while. He stands out because the others took longer to track him down than the other immune individuals. So if he truly has strong radio expertise, he might have used those skills to interfere with the hive mind's shared consciousness, making himself harder to find. That tactic seemed to have worked at first, but it was only a matter of time before they did find him. Since the joining stems from an RNA sequence transmitted through radio signals, it's reasonable to think that the others eventually figured out what he was doing, shut down whatever frequency he was using to shield himself, and finally located him. But if Manousos is indeed a specialist in radio or signal technology, then he could play a larger role in the future in undoing the joining. The hive mind is apparently held together by a kind of psychic glue created from a reverse-engineered virus developed in a lab using the RNA-based radio signal that humanity uncovered. Cracking the mystery of that signal is therefore essential to understanding it and possibly discovering a cure. And right now, who's more likely to decipher it than someone who seems to be knowledgeable with radios? Of course, he'd still need help from someone with real scientific expertise to decode the RNA component of this strange transmission. So if there's another unjoined person with that kind of knowledge, then it's easy to imagine Carol, Manousos, and this potential third figure joining to try and break the hive mind. I think that Manousos is going to use his radio skills to try and do something else undetected, and right now, I'm leaning towards that being him contacting Carol back. If he finds a way to be undetected in his conversation with her, then maybe they can try and work things out. With Carol apparently doubling down in the next episode, then her reporting her findings to Manousos and him doing the same in his own way would be a way of getting more answers. If they find a way to do that completely undetected, then that would be something that they could use to their advantage. The actor of Manousos shared in press for Pluribus that his character has endured significant loss and refuses to let anything else slip away. And since, as Zosha noted, that the group didn't even know Manousos existed for the first 33 hours, then there's plenty left to uncover about him. It will be fascinating to see how his journey compares to Carol's and whether the two might eventually cross paths. I think they will eventually, but I'm not sure if that will be straight away, especially after the introduction of his radio signal usage. I think it will show him trying to contact Carol undetected, and their connection will build on from there. Manousos' reaction to Carol's call in episode 4 does say it all, as he writes her name down on a piece of paper. He clearly took her angry reaction on that call seriously, as that must have been the first moment since the joining event that someone has shown true human anger towards him. Moving on, it's time to theorise what exactly we might see happen next with Carol. Given where Pluribus leaves Carol at the end of episode 4, her next steps are likely to revolve around navigating the tension between the hive mind and her lingering loyalty to individual identity. Up until this point, the series has shown her caught in a liminal space, curious about the collective intelligence, yet wary of losing herself to it. So based on the episode's description and her learning about the hive mind not lying, the next movement will probably be a more decisive choice. We may see her begin testing the boundaries of the hive's influence, either by accessing some form of important information or comparing her independent thoughts to the hive's suggestions. She's already begun to do this, so it will be interesting to see what double down means in the description. I did say in my last theory video that based on the released footage of her arriving in Las Vegas and seeing trailer footage of Kumba there, that she might ultimately try and find out more about the other unjoined who are more accepting of this new world. Now of course the Las Vegas scene is likely to be from a later episode, but that doesn't mean that big things won't happen in the build up to that. So I think that in either episode 5 or 6, she might start looking into those unjoined characters a bit further. Becoming more to the episode's description, which is loneliness be damned, this is a forceful way of saying that someone refuses to let loneliness stop them. It conveys a strong sense of determination and independence, showing that the person intends to follow their path or stick to their beliefs even if it means being alone. So if we thought what she did with Zosha at the end of episode 4 was testing, then the next episode will feature her doing something with an added punch. Based on the episode image and title, I think we could see Carol take Zosha somewhere where the joined can't get to her. Maybe she takes Zosha to a place that would take a lot more time to reach, allowing her to question her more there. The title Got Milk might be Carol responding to Zosha that milk is all she has to give her while they stay in that secluded location. The other part of the episode's description, which reads, "Howls in the night reveal a new source of danger," is something a bit more suggestive. There was a teaser released prior to the first episode of Pluribus, and it had Carol in the middle of her street howling back at certain howls that she could hear in the distance. So that confirms that this footage is from the next episode. Now, if you remember, in Carol's meeting of the unjoined humans on Air Force One, Kumba points out that all the zoos are now empty. Mei, who lives close to the Beijing Zoo, also explains that it was the joined who released the animals. She even describes trying to trace a giraffe away from a tree outside her home, but it completely ignored her. Kumba additionally mentioned that several people were mauled by lions and tigers during all the chaos that went down. So that leaves us questioning, where did all these animals end up? Did they return to the wild, and why haven't we seen any pets in the series? Well, one circulating theory is that the giraffe ignored May because it wasn't part of the joining at all. That same idea applies to the lions and tigers, as the fact that they attacked humans suggests that they aren't connected to the join's peaceful collective hive mind. So in suspecting all this, I'm going to guess that this howling sound that's disturbing Carol is her call to look into the animal situation. It's either that, or it gives her a bright idea surrounding her next move with the hive mind as a whole. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about is a bigger theory that I had for the show, following everything we've seen up until now. In my previous theory videos, I discussed my AI theory that, to be honest, I did question as being solely metaphorical. I wasn't entirely sure if it would be literal, but I knew that it was at least likely that the show was being metaphorical towards that idea. And that's mainly because Gilligan did mention it in an interview. But after episode 4, I actually have a different theory that I want to propose, and it's to do with what the Joined have been saying throughout the show and the links that I drew from it. In particular, the last few episodes got me thinking a bit more about the idea of human evolution. Now, stay with me as I have gone quite deep with this, and it may initially sound quite wild. But anyway, in typical science fiction settings, including the Pluribus series, a hive mind can be interpreted as a symbolic or literal extension of evolution, depending on how the world building frames it. If the hive mind emerges from technological networking, such as neural implants, quantum communication systems, or AI meditated cognition, then it becomes part of a broader evolutionary narrative in which humans and their tools co-develop. In this view, evolution isn't just biological, as it's cognitive and cultural, with a hive mind potentially representing a new layer of shared intelligence. On the other hand, if the hive mind is a biological change or genetic, perhaps tied to the collective consciousness, then it could be seen as a more traditional evolutionary step. A mutation or adaptation that enhances group coordination, decision making, and pattern recognition. And then also, with that in mind, it could be further considered that the hive mind is a return to a deep ancestral mode of human cooperation. Our early survival depended on communal thinking, synchronized emotional responses, and implicit shared knowledge. So in that case, the hive might not just be a new direction, but a technologically amplified revival of those ancient traits. Alternative to this, a hive mind might also represent divergent evolution, where hive-linked individuals begin to differ so greatly from unlinked humans that they form a separate subspecies with distinct cognitive architecture. Across these possibilities, the central idea remains consistent in that a hive mind can act as a metaphor for humanity's perpetual movement towards greater interconnectedness, whether through biology, technology, or culture. So with the Pluribus storyline, with its themes of shared agency and distributed identity, it fits naturally into this evolutionary framework, making it entirely plausible that its hive mind concept is meant to reflect or even drive the next stage of human development. When Zosha and others like Larry in episode 4 suggest to Carol that what the hive is doing is good and that they want to fix her, then maybe that is linked. It's hard not to think of them as being somewhat bad because they have stripped the world of its agency. But if the world was not great before, then maybe this is the plan to fix it, or as Zosha suggested in episode 3, giving Carol a life preserver. Of course, there's the other question of whether it was indeed extraterrestrial, and I have suggested alternatives to that in my other theory videos. But at the end of the day, it's finding out why exactly this happened. And for me, after all the radio signal focus with Manousos, the reveal of the hive mind being a somewhat collective consciousness, Carol finding out they cannot lie, and them telling Carol repeatedly that they want to help her, then what if it's to do with evolution for the better? Whether that is the right thing to do because of the removal of individual agency would again be the big question. But I do find this evolution theory quite interesting, and it links in with what Gilligan said in his interviews for the show. He said he got a bit frustrated with the direction the world was going in, how there was almost this echo chamber mentality, and how politically the world has been split down the middle. So maybe with Pluribus he's going one step deeper and questioning, well, what if this happened but in a way that was to help us through evolution? Maybe Carol, Manousos and a few other unjoined are the outliers of this evolution, the ones who are stopping that next step for humanity. But they were my thoughts and predictions for Pluribus episode 5 and beyond. After how good the series is getting, of course the anticipation is high for more of Gilligan's new show. Hopefully in the weeks ahead we continue to get some interesting answers to the big questions and the characters and world building are deepened further. But with all that said, what are your predictions and theories surrounding what happens in the next episode? Let me know down below in the comments section. For much more videos on Vince Gilligan's Pluribus, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like rating and follow me on social media via the links in the description. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.